Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. 21 minutes past 9 on the clock here in our studio. And this show is brought to you, this segment, by the African Muslims Agency. We're talking about personal excellence and mentoring. And we cross over to Hafiz Imran Chunara, the CEO of the Africa Muslims Agency. And today we're talking about emotional maturity. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hafiz Imran, and welcome to the program once again.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Azhar, always great to be with you guys. And today we've got a bit of a jam-packed program and a bit of an emotional subject. And to be honest, I think this subject of emotional maturity probably should go from today over into tomorrow so that we can, because I don't want any, we want to unpack it carefully. So maybe we could call it part one, part two, whatever.
Yeah, but let's do justice.
Let's do justice. Emotional maturity can be quite a touchy subject, can be quite a deep subject. But I want to maybe start off our discussion maybe today and tomorrow about the fact that, you see, first of all, there's no such thing as an unemotional person. So everyone is an emotional human being. There's no such thing, and hear me on this, because there may be people who are more emotionally expressive and people who are less emotionally expressive. But there's no such thing as an unemotional person. And often we say, oh, men are unemotional. Well, no, actually not. Men are very deeply emotional human beings. Think about this logically. You're a physical human being. You can't say, I'm not a physical human being. You are. You're a physical. You have a physical form. You're a spiritual human being, whether you believe you have a spiritual life or not. You're a spiritual human being. There's a spiritual aspect.
Oh, we seem to have lost that feed there. Let's hope we can get that internet connection going once again. And yes, accused of being unemotional or not being emotional. But there seems to be, a correction and a clarification on that by Imran Chunara. And let's hope we can get him back online and back in tune with the program this morning. Very important discussion, the emotional maturity of people. And we probably will have to carry on with this discussion across 2 days. Not usually that we do that because it's so concise and we manage to squeeze in so much of information into the particular slot. But it seems that this topic is so big and so important that we will have to extend it across 2 days. Let's just check on the technical side there. Are we getting Hafiz Imran back? And yes, I do understand that he's joining us once again. And yes, let's get that connection. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so you were saying, Imran, that men are sometimes assumed to be non-emotional.
Absolutely. You see, we have this mentality in society, and I think it's developed over decades, over generations, where men are kind of, when you bring up your son, you say, be a man. Be strong. Men don't cry. So we kind of we teach men how to suppress their emotions. Does not mean they're unemotional. They're deeply emotional human beings. Like I was saying, now please, before somebody really gets upset at me, there may be a situation whereby, for example, not there may be, we've allowed women to express their emotions. We say, okay, it's okay for a girl to cry, but it's not okay for a boy to cry. It's okay for, women are we've said this over generations, women are emotional beings. Men are not emotional beings. No, men are deeply emotional human beings. We also have emotions, but we've been taught not to express it. So I'll give you that maybe there are women who are much more emotionally expressive, but it does not mean men are unemotional, right? Number one. Number two is, it's like saying I'm not a physical human being. You have a physical form, so of course you're a physical human being. It's like saying I'm not a mental human being. Of course you're a mental human being. I'm not a spiritual person. You are. You may not exercise your spirituality. You may not develop your spirituality. That's your choice. Like you may not develop your emotions. You may not develop your mental state. You may not develop your physical body, but you can't deny I'm a physical human being, I'm a mental human being, I'm an emotional human being, I'm a spiritual human being. So you're an emotional person as well. So let's clear that up. So if we agree that we're all deeply emotional human beings, we're not talking about how expressive we are. That's a different discussion. But we're deeply emotional human beings. Then wouldn't it make sense to learn how to develop our emotions? I mean, we're all physical human beings, and we all know we should be healthy. If we pick up weight, we know that, okay, probably a good idea to try to lose some of that weight. If we, whatever the case is. So we all know that. Our children, boys and girls, we know that they should develop their mental capacity. So we send them to school or whatever to kind of develop that. We know that because, so how come we don't learn to develop our emotions? Because that's part of our makeup. The same way, as a Muslim community, we'll send our kids to madrasa, for example, to learn how to develop their spiritual side. Or we'll, at home as a family, we'll help them develop, we'll help each other develop in this month of Ramadan, develop our spirituality. Okay? So then why don't we spend time developing our emotional side? We are emotional beings. So that's important to spend time in your life developing your emotional side. And by the way, being older does not mean you are more emotionally mature. Age brings nothing but age. Age doesn't guarantee wisdom. We talked about this before. Age doesn't guarantee intellect. It doesn't guarantee any of that. I know people who are older who are not very wise. I know people who are older who are not very emotionally mature human beings. Doesn't make them bad people, just means they never developed that aspect of their life. The older you are does not mean you are more emotionally mature. You could be older and emotionally immature, mentally insecure. You could be younger and emotionally mature, mentally secure. It's got nothing to do with age. Yeah? Of course, the longer you are in this world, you experience a lot more. So you have a lot more stuff that's gone on in your life, that you've made different decisions. But hey, you and I probably both know people who are older in their years, but are really struggling emotionally, mentally, and even physically, etc., because they haven't taken care of that aspect of their lives. So it does require a disciplined effort. Now, we talked about the fact that just because women might be more emotionally expressive does not mean that men are not emotional beings. Now, because the gender may determine the willingness to express emotions. We've allowed it in society, and I believe we've done a massive disservice. Why is there so much domestic violence, abuse, and all the stuff going on now? It's because men have been suppressing emotions for generations, and we taught them to do that. And so when he does not know how to be emotionally mature and express his emotions maturely, he does the only thing that he knows to do, and that's to use his physical strength. Am I saying he's right? Not by any stretch of the imagination. That's completely wrong, completely unnecessary. However, we forced him to suppress his emotions. We didn't teach him how to develop them. So I want to be that advocate for saying, hey man, we must spend time, men and women, developing emotions. And we must allow men and women to express. We must teach men that it's okay to express emotions and not shoot it down, because then they resort to the physical side of it. And you see, if you don't know how to develop your emotional side, I didn't know. I'm just so grateful that a mentor came alongside of me in my early 20s and started deliberately sowing into my life, and through that other mentors beyond that as well. I'm so grateful that I seeked to go for therapy at some point. And by the way, I want to clear that up for a second. In our community, especially in our Indian community, and it saddens me the most, it's this thing about, well, if you've been for therapy, shame. What happened? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. When you go to gym and you tell me you go to gym and you got a personal trainer, do I say, oh, shame, man? What's wrong? No. I'm like, hey, man, fire up. If you say to me you went to a financial planner, I don't say, oh, shame, man. What's wrong? No. I'm like, hey, okay, cool, fire up. How come when you say you've gone for therapy, it's like, oh, shame, are you okay? What do you mean, are you okay? Of course you're okay. You're actually more secure than the person who does not go for therapy, by the way. Therapy does not mean something wrong with you, does not mean you're weak. It means you're actually very strong to be able to go and understand perspective from another human being who's been trained in that area of life. So if you don't know how to develop emotional maturity, folks, seek someone, seek assistance, seek perspective, seek help, like all of us would in other areas of our life. Now, let me wrap up today's segment, and we'll continue this tomorrow because there's a lot more to unpack here. You see, when there's trauma, and I want to explain this properly, when there's trauma in your life, physical trauma in your life, we can see it. Like if you get hurt, you physically hurt, someone cuts you or you cut yourself by mistake, you go and fix it as soon as possible. Like you go see a medical doctor or someone, because it's physical trauma. It's noticeable. I see it. But now, you see, with emotional trauma, you can't see it. And that's why we ignore it. We only deal with things we can see. I see myself get hurt. I see something swollen on my body. I see myself get cut. I fall down and break my leg, so I feel it. It's there. I can see my leg is, is in a weird position. Okay, I must go and see a doctor. But emotional trauma, you can't see it, so we ignore it. That's the most dangerous thing. Imagine you ignored something that physically went wrong in your body. Imagine you got cut and your blood is coming out of your body and you're like, nah, it's all right, never mind, let's carry on. It'd just be the most insane thing ever. It's like, well, everybody around you would be like, you're bleeding. You'd be like, it's all right, never mind. I'm fine. It's not really. It'd be like, are you nuts? So the same way when you're bleeding emotionally, why is it that you're like, nah, it's okay. You're bleeding emotionally, just nobody can see it. So folks, this, I'm sad that we have to end on this subject because tomorrow I want to unpack this. But please, I beg you, understand, every human being, male, female, doesn't matter what color, what religion, whatever, everyone is an emotional being. So, I don't know if you have any thoughts to share with that, my friend.
Well, I can still tell you that in the life of the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he expressed his emotion. He would smile, he would be happy, and at times he would be sad and he would tear as well and cry. And this was the perfect human being, an example for all of us.
Absolutely.
And if he could do it, then who are we to say, men will always be strong and will never cry and will never shed a tear and will never feel anything. Very important topic, and let's continue with unpacking it tomorrow.
And remember, as you so rightly said, even the Prophet ﷺ, when he found later on in his life, after Khadija had passed on many years, and he found something of hers.
Yes.
And he cried and he wept. Imagine, because the emotion came out again. Because he was still paining for her. It's a normal human being. It's unbelievable. It's a perfect example, of course, to all of us, alhamdulillah.
Imran Chunara, Personal Excellence Mentor and CEO of the Africa Muslims Agency. Jazakallahu khairan. The show is brought to you by the Africa Muslims Agency. We chat to you again tomorrow, same time, same place, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
World-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
The kitchen, the heart of the home, where memories are made and celebrated. Our go-to place for those freshly stacked pancakes early in the morning or for that late-night snack munchies. We are in there together, cooking, eating, and celebrating life together. Let's keep the kitchen a place that is shared by everyone, where we build stronger bonds and grow together. Sunfoil, Now We Cooking. Visit nowwecooking.co.za for recipes that everyone can help make.
It's time to act now. COVID-19 is a global pandemic and we need your help to flatten the curve. Islamic Relief is reaching out to the most vulnerable of our community in South Africa, Yemen and Gaza. 400 Rand can provide a family with a food pack in South Africa and 500 Rand a hygiene pack in Syria, Yemen and Gaza. With your help, we can save lives across the world. Donate now. Go to www.islamic-relief.org.za.
Salam Media, your spiritual companion this Ramadan.
Yes, welcome back to Vadi. You're listening to the Alternative View. You're watching it as well on our Facebook page. Facebook.com/Salam Media, as well as our YouTube page. So you can go to youtube.com and just Google it up or look up, search for it, Salam Media, and you'll be able to find all of our latest videos as well as interviews that have been conducted. Now, we go straight into Polokwane for the next segment of the show, and we speak to our presenter at One Nation FM, none other than Tesetso Moa, and it's with regards to the Polokwane High that has ordered the Polokwane station commander to ensure that officers under his control do not harass, intimidate, or arrest business owners and employees rather, for not having a temporary operating permit. Now, this could have a major impact in terms of businesses across the country. And we joined now online by Tisetso from One Nation FM. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Azhar, and good morning to your listeners as well.
Yes, it's wonderful having you on. So, what took place actually in the court this week?
Well, what happened is that perhaps let me just give you a background to the story and how we got to the High Court. So, business owners around Polokwane were being arrested for not having their business permit, or this permit that was distributed or given by the Polokwane municipality during the level 4 of the lockdown, right? And this happened on the 30th of April. Now, what happened is the business owners and a businessman, there are actually 4 businesses that took the municipality to court. Is Imram Ali, Ferry Fabrics, and Amir Investments among this group. Now, what happened at the court is now that the court has decided, or rather ruled in their favor, and said that the Polokwane municipality does not have to ask for these businesses to have a permit to operate their businesses. And there was also, they also told the South African Police Services, the commander in Polokwane, that they should not arrest or even harass their staff members as well as customers that are coming in to buy into their businesses. Now, what this means is now that these 4 gentlemen and other businesses in the province within the Polokwane municipality will be able to operate their businesses, even if they do not have that permit from the Polokwane municipality. So it's certainly good news on their side, because you can imagine the kind of ramifications that this lockdown has had on their businesses. During the time that they were not operating, they did not get any income, and they may have lost a lot of money. It's unfortunate that the municipality is not going to be held liable for the fact that they were not able to operate, even though, you know, in their own right, they had the permit to operate. So certainly good news for local businesses in Polokwane, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of their stores open, because to be quite honest with you, as I've seen a few stores in Polokwane that have not yet operated, even though we are a step closer into level 3. And I certainly hope that the announcement by the president that we are slowly, gradually going to level 3 will mean that the easing of these restrictions will allow for these businesses to operate.
Yes, and Polokwane and the entire Limpopo province, in fact, could be one of those areas that move to level 3, as the numbers still remain relatively low compared to, say, the Western Cape or Gauteng and even KwaZulu-Natal. Now, have you got any response from the business owners? Do you know, perhaps, have they expressed publicly their sentiments following the court ruling?
Well, I just saw a tweet from Mr. Ali saying that it is with great pleasure that they've won the court and that they'll now be able to operate. I think that sometime in my show later this afternoon, I will try to get them on the line just to get their sentiments. But one can already sense that from what he tweeted, that this is indeed great news, and they cannot wait to operate and open their businesses again.
And then the general sentiment amongst the population in Polokwane regarding COVID-19, have they been, have people been obeying the, social distancing, wearing of masks? Have they been cognizant of the dangers that the virus could potentially pose to them, despite the numbers remaining low there?
Right. Coming into work and going back to work, yes, we do see a lot of people putting on their mask and adhering to the rules of social distancing. But just last week, when a number of people flocked to the Polokwane CBD for their social grants, the issue of social distancing was not adhered at all. In fact, it was quite a concern to the Department of Health and also the Social Development that during that time, where a number of people flock to the CBD during the SASSA payment points are not adhering to the rule of social distancing. And there's a bit of a concern also as we go into levels 3 to see if the numbers will remain as low as they are, because last week we saw quite a spike in the number of people testing positive to this COVID-19, and it could have been because of those SASSA pay points and the number of people coming to the CBD, which we might see happening again come the 1st of June, or the month end of May rather. And so we are hoping that we'll get some sort of direction from the health department as well as the social development agency, or even the social development, to say what exactly will be done to ensure that come month end of May, we will not see the long queues that we witnessed last week, which cost a number of cases of people testing for COVID-19 double in less than 24 hours.
Now, finally, here in the Gauteng area, I know in KZN as well, we've seen a huge number of people becoming dependent on the social grant system. Number one, people who were not on there previously are now standing in queues. Two, we've seen people really looking forward to that food hamper or parcel or some kind of assistance from NGOs, government, and community members because of the economic pressures that we are facing as the country. People have really just pointed to the stomach and said, we are hungry. What is the economic situation in Polokwane, and how are people faring with regards to their daily food intake? We know there's huge rural areas, large-scale poverty existed prior to COVID-19. What's the situation like now?
Well, it is no secret. We are in rural province, and as a result, a lot of our people are vulnerable to lockdown. Our government in the province established a food bank.
All right, so we just lost your sound there. I don't know if you can hear me quite clearly, but the sound has gone a bit weak on your side.
Can you hear me now?
All right. No, it's very faint and it's a bit muffled, so we can't get that sound clear on our side. I do understand that you can hear us, right? But we can't hear you right now. And we'll see. Perhaps we'll try and catch up with Tisetso tomorrow or some other time to find out on the economic situation, what's happened out in Polokwane, and how people are faring in the Greater Limpopo area. It has been a poverty-stricken province historically, and I can only assume that with the further possible job losses as a result of the economic lockdown, that this has been intensified. But those anecdotes and stories of individual peoples on the ground we'll try and get from Tisetso Mowa on another day. Stay tuned.
Broker today, and
broker, did the broker tell you that our economy is a mess? There's bushfires in Australia, America wanted World War III, and now the coronavirus is traveling around the world.
Well, I also thought about purchasing some crypto.
Crypto? What's that, like another pyramid scheme? I don't trust what I can't see.
There's an apartment in Belito.
So all your family will be asking to stay there for free. And what if the government takes it away, eh?
Dad, I don't think it works like that.
I'll tell you what works. Gold. At your age, I invested in gold coins and it paid for your university fees and your wedding. No contracts, no agreements. Your investment is in your hands and you own it. With a 70% growth in only 5 years, do you still doubt gold investment? Contact RJ Coin today. 031 202 4701 or visit them at 151 Stephen Dlamini Road in Musgrave, Durban. Randery Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange, your passport to gold investment.
Willowton Group, manufacturers of Sunfoil, Sunshine D, and Delight, supports the Stay Home, Save South Africa campaign and calls for all South Africans to heed the call to help stop the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. Practically, together we can beat this. Together we have hope. Visit sacoronavirus.co.za for more information.
We all plan to see a better day filled with goodness and cheer. This Ramadan, our victory will be in strengthening bonds by providing hope to the most vulnerable. Join Salam Foundation and Salam Media in remembering and serving the forgotten people of South Africa, Zimbabwe, Syria, and Yemen. We need you. Humanity needs you. Contribute to Salam Foundation. FNB 626691476665. Reference name plus country. Lila Sadaka Zakah. Call 072 122 8400 for more information, or visit www.salammedia.com.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
ربي أنت القريب على محاري من بعيد يا ربي بطشهم شديد آذوني ربي أنت القريب على محاري من بعيد يا ربي بطشهم شديد آذوني Allah, you know what I need when I'm praying down on my knees. I'm begging you, Allah, please take me to heaven.
Welcome back to the program. My name is Azhar Vadi. You're listening to the Alternative View on Salam Media, One Nation FM in Polokwane and Al Ansar out in Durban and Pietermaritzburg. And it's that time of the morning when we look at a tribute to Muslim broadcasters as well as journalists, writers, and people that have been in the media industry and contributed in a large scale towards the Muslim and Islamic narrative. But also those who stand for social justice, who stand for human rights, and who stand for equality amongst humankind. And one such person is the legendary and leading anti-apartheid journalist, none other than Amin Ekelwaya. And he was part of the Indicator newspaper that operated by and large in the Lenasia area. And I remember growing up glued to that production and those articles and what was written in there. I'm joined online today by his mentee and former editor of the Indicator as well, none other than a man known in the KZN area as Batman. And some of you will know him, none other than Muhammad Ismail. And I see that there he is holding up and you're watching this right now on facebook.com/Salam Media as well as on our YouTube channel. You can see he's holding up a frame and he's pictured in the frame alongside none other than the legendary Amin Ekelwaya. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. I didn't expect to be on this morning. It was a very surprise call from Ponty last night, so jazakallah to you guys. And I had to open your show with that frame because it's something near and dear to me. When the late, I used to always call him Uncle Amin, when the late Amin Ekelwaya was the media director for the South African Olympic Bid Committee back in, I forget the year, 1990 something. And that was a moment when I conferred the Human Rights Award, a Lifetime Human Rights Award, upon him for his efforts, because that was one of his brainchild projects to introduce the Human Rights Awards that South Africa never really saw before, and where we honored people from communities that never ever got an honor for what they did in their lives. And you're familiar with it. You're born and bred Lenasian, so you know what we stood for. But jazakallah for the show this morning.
You know what they say about Lenasia, it's the navel of the earth.
I don't know about that, but you can take Asia out of Lenasia, but you can. No, jazakallah for that.
Nonetheless, I'm looking at a brief write-up here in none other than the Associated Press, and that's the international news agency, when they penned together an obituary for the late Amin Ekelwaya. And they described him as a leading anti-apartheid journalist during South Africa's era of white minority rule. And he passed away at the age of 52 due to cancer. But tell us a little bit about him. What made him such an outstanding figure in the community?
It's quite a story to go back and to sort of recall, Azhar, because when Amin started his journalism career, there was not many so-called black journalists in South Africa, and they were just sort of coming through the cracks. And you must remember that media in those years was dominated by the white minority, and a lot of the news that was going into the newspapers was about those kind of communities and what affected those people. So Amin went into, I think he walked into the Rand Daily Mail one day and he says, listen, I want to report. They said, what would you want to report about? And he said, I want to do about sport and how sport affects people in our communities and the impact it has, apartheid sport. And it all started from there, and it just took off, because prior to that he studied medicine overseas, and it wasn't his choice, and journalism was his forte, and alhamdulillah it continued from there. So he brought into the media a whole different aspect of news that affected communities that weren't, their stories weren't being told. And here's a man who sort of had a meteoric rise in terms of alternative journalism, and that's what I grew up on under him. And I always tell everybody, and I discuss with my young reporters, that when you're doing news, find an alternative angle to what you're doing. Stop and forget about the run-of-the-mill stories. It doesn't work. You need to find a story that's behind the story. So there's a lot of analysis that can go into a story, something that I learned from him. And sometimes I used to go to him and say, Uncle Amin, I don't have a story. He says, what did you speak to that guy? I said, yeah, I spoke to him, but he gave this to me. He said, that's your story. So there's always a story there. And he had a very unique way of teaching me journalism, not just about being a reporter, because you can start out as a reporter, but it takes a lot to become a journalist. So he went out there with a varied sort of approach, a different approach in terms of journalism. And we thrived on alternative journalism, and that's one of the things where we always faced the wrath of the apartheid government at that time.
Yeah, and I think the two of you, Amin Akelwaya as himself and Muhammad Ismail, your names have almost become synonymous through the work that you've done.
He is not mine.
You almost can't mention one without talking about the other. I don't know where the old Batman thing came in from, but anyway.
Well, that's news. That's news to me, Azhar.
So this is really as much as a tribute it is to Amin. It's also a tribute to you as a young journalist and continuing in the field of community service as you are in the Durban area now, and through your media work with Tabloid. But how do you often, I see posts that you put up about guiding young journalists, people who are just qualifying or trying to find their feet in the field. How important is that? You were once upon a time that young journalist associated to Amin Akelwaya.
Coming out of university is one thing. You've learned the practicals. Getting into the field is something else. And I've mentored a lot of young journalists now, at tabloid newspapers. And many times I ask them a question: did you learn this in university? And sometimes they say, no, we didn't learn this. So I said, what are you getting taught? Because the aspect of journalism is more than just your theory. So I'll give you an example. Many years ago, there was an incident where this was one young journalist where I think Zuma came to one of the schools or something, and this child gave Zuma 10 Rand. And I just need to use this example so people can understand why you need to look at an alternative news angle. And I told the journalist, I said, look, don't use the angle that Zuma has been given 10 Rand by this particular child of a special needs school. What you should do is you should speak about the fact that Zuma spoke about, or he said that issues of disability must be spoken about more in Parliament. And the newspapers the following day didn't pick up on that, because I was fortunate enough, because I was on the school governing body, and I could sit across the table from Zuma, and I addressed these issues. And I was also chairperson of Down Syndrome South Africa at that time. And I said, Mr. President, so this, and this. He listened, he came out into the assembly, and he spoke about that issue. And I told the journalist, take that angle. And had the journalist listened to me, she would have had a very, very good story, apart from everybody just running with a 10 Rand thing. And added more to that story is when Zuma opened Parliament the following year, that was 2011, he singled out Down Syndrome South Africa, and he said in Parliament that issues of disability must be spoken about more. So journalists must pick out salient issues when politicians are speaking or when a community-based person is speaking, because don't always find the common angle of the story. You need to go beyond finding a common angle of the story, which would make you an even better reporter, a better journalist, where you're now bringing those kind of things into your publication, into your broadcast mediums, or whether it's TV or radio. And that's one of the things that Amin Akelwaya taught me, and may Allah grant him Jannah. So I learned that concept of journalism to keep on picking on something that is different, which makes your publication or sets you apart from the common. Then what happens is people start wanting to listen to your show, as people want to start picking up your newspaper and reading it. So you are setting a trend. You need to be a trendsetter in journalism. Forget the mundane.
We've also received a comment, voice note from Uncle Amin's beloved daughter Zaytun Aklwaya Abed. So let's just take a few moments to listen to what she had to say.
Assalamu alaikum to the panel and listeners. When Salam Media asked me to speak about my fondest memories of my papa, I suddenly went blank at first, and then the floodgates of my memory bank burst open, and there was just too many of them to mention in such a short time. So I chose my favorites and hope it will share some light to a different side of Amin. My papa was an ardent supporter of education, freedom, and democracy. He taught us to stand firm in fighting oppressors in their many forms, to hold firmly to our faith, and to remember we are Muslim first, then South African. He was witty, kind, extremely funny, and loved the Beatles and Manchester United, which later turned into West Ham United. Why, I'll never understand. He had immense love for his creator and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, as well as for his family, friends, and country. Papa was given an opportunity in the late 70s, early 80s, when he managed to interview the great boxing legend Muhammad Ali at his home in Atlanta. At the end of the interview, my papa asked Ali if they could take a picture sparring. Can you picture this? My papa was short in stature next to a huge-muscled world heavyweight boxing champion. So he comes home and plays us the video of the interview, and when the picture of them sparring comes on, he reverses the movie, and it looks like he's handing Ali a right hook, and Ali is backing away from him to avoid a TKO. That got us rolling on the floor every time we watched that reel. The other memory was when he was lying bedridden, deathly ill at home in Emmarentia. When in walked the drenched President Mandela and his entourage. You can imagine the shock on our faces as it was pretty late in the night, pouring buckets of rain, and in waltzes Madiba in a beige trench coat, smiling yet concerned, asking to see Papa. He gets ushered into the room with his many bodyguards and is left alone with my papa and mum. When he left, I entered the room to see my sunken father's face beaming, and my mum says Madiba sat on the bed next to him, held his hand and singled him out for his contribution to the anti-apartheid struggle, and thanked him for his unrelenting commitment and all the work he did during and after the struggle. He called my papa a hero. My special and personal connection to my papa is also that he always said we shared a love for a surah, where both our names are mentioned, Surah Teen, Zaytun and Amin. So as a child, Papa became my Popeye and I became Olive. And like most daughters, the fathers are always the heroes, strong and brave, a daughter's personal bodyguard, and my father was mine. Jazakallah Salam Media for acknowledging my father and all those who made and continue to make a huge difference in Muslim media in South Africa. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yeah, well, that was rather emotional.
That brought back a flood of memories, Azhar, and I can tell you, I was there many times visiting the late Amin at his place in Emmarentia, and I can still picture him laying on that bed, and he never let up that cigarette, and even in that moment of pain and everything else, he just put his head, just smoked, and we always had this thing.
Lockdown now, eh?
Yeah, for sure. And we always had this thing. It was very, very beautiful, and he used to call me Issy, and every time in the office I'd have to walk in or we were busy with something. He says, Issy, tea. I said, gee, uncle, I'm bringing the tea now. So we worked on tea, we worked on those deadlines, we burned the midnight oil, we did everything that we had to do. And I remember this one time, my spelling was a little bit bad out there, and he ruled me out on the spelling, and he says, I'll give you 100% for getting all the facts. I'll give you full marks for getting them, but you just can't bloody spell. So I learned very quickly to make sure that my spelling was in order. So those are important things. But today, journalists rely on social media to find their stories. They rely on auto check to see that the spelling and that is correct. And I think that sort of that weakens your ability. And I don't mean any disrespect to journalists, but we grew up the hard way, where you had two different versions of dictionaries on your desk, and you had to, if you couldn't spell that word, you had to make sure you looking at the dictionary, find that word, not going onto Google and trying to type in the word, and Google gives you the correct information, or using Grammarly to write your stories, and that it must come from here, it must come from your heart, because that makes you a good reporter, good journalist. And I can remember those times when Amin used to sit at his keyboard and just bang out the stories, and I used to wonder where does those words just flow, and it just comes through and everything else. And I think, alhamdulillah, Allah shukr, a lot of him rubbed on off to me, And I was just with one of my other journalists in Newcastle, our Newcastle paper, and she phoned me. She says, I need to do the story, and So I guided. I said, okay, do this. Your headline is this, right around the headline. Bring this committee and do that. Phone this person. She says, how the hell do you do that? I said, it takes years of experience, but you will get there soon. So learn from your mentors, learn from people who have been there doing journalism for a long time. And if you want to be a good journalist, read a lot of newspapers, watch the news, pick up on issues, and develop stories from there. Look at what is different. Always look at the alternative news, because it was very politicized, and you can't be a journalist without being politicized in the issues, because everything that you do around journalism, around the stories is about politics. At the end of the day, like with lockdown now, it's thriving with politics. Hampers are being stolen. That's politics. Those kind of things. So it was a fabulous journey with him, and I think of him often. Alhamdulillah, may Allah bless him and his family, and grant him Jannah, Police Qabr with Noor. It's just been a phenomenal journey.
I mean, I can imagine, and we're going to rename you today. I think Amin holds the title of Batman, and you can be his Robin.
Okay, inshallah, whichever you choose.
Mohammed Ismail, former editor of The Indicator and assistant and journalist alongside Amin Akraya, the legend. Jazakallah khairan for your time this morning. You go well.
Jazakallah.
Full day.
Appreciate it.
See you again, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.